Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have a great show for you tonight. Right here beside me is Mr. Gary Stewart from Wisconsin, one of the first patients to come from Wisconsin and get an Oregon medical marijuana card. He'll be talking about his work trying to pass a medical marijuana law in Wisconsin and our work out there as well. Sitting next to me is Mr. Casper Leach. He's standing by ready to come on board, and over in the wings is John Cornett. Hey, John.
Hey, Mo. How you doing?
Very well, very well.
Who's this?
And so...
Who's this guy?
He's Gary Stork. Okay, my name's on there. Anyway, you're confusing me, Casper. Stop that.
Sorry.
It's live TV, you know. Anyway, we'll be back in just a moment with our Hemp News segment. Then John Cornett will come and sing us some groovy tunes, and we'll be taking your calls and questions with a couple videos to throw in there. So stay tuned.
I feel the force.
Hello, our first story tonight is from the Bay State of Massachusetts. Out there, the campaign to regulate marijuana like alcohol on Monday announced it had collected more than 100,000 signatures in support of a ballot initiative to end marijuana prohibition in Massachusetts. The signatures must be reviewed and certified by town and city clerks before being submitted to the Secretary of the Commonwealth by December 2nd. The valid signatures of at least 64,750 registered Massachusetts voters are required to qualify for the November 2016 ballot. After the Secretary of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts' office tallies and confirms the signatures, the petition will be transmitted to the Massachusetts legislature. If the legislature does not adopt the measure, initiative backers must collect another 10,792 registered voters' additional signatures in June 2016 to place the initiative on the November 2016 ballot. Looks like Massachusetts is going to join Nevada and California and some other states to vote on marijuana legalization next year. In Washington, D.C., over 12% of federal drug prisoners are incarcerated for marijuana-related violations, according to data compiled by the U.S. Bureau of Prisons and the United States Sentencing Commission and published by the U.S. Bureau of Justice Statistics. Of the 94,678 federal inmates incarcerated for drug violations as their most serious offense, 12.4%, or 11,533 people, are serving time for violating marijuana laws. Most marijuana offenders are in prison for trafficking violations. The average length of prison for those incarcerated for marijuana-related offenses is 88 months. That's about 7 years. Nearly half, or 44.3%, of federal marijuana inmates are offenders with minimal criminal histories who have not previously served time in prison. 85% of marijuana offenders did not possess a firearm. Over a third of the federal marijuana prisoners are aged 40 or older. 35% of the federal marijuana prisoners are not U.S. citizens. The percentage of marijuana-related federal prisoners has remained virtually unchanged over the past decade. Also out of Washington, D.C., in public statements made last week by the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration Director Chuck Rosenberg, he said that cannabis is not medicinal and should not be classified as such. Speaking to reporters on Wednesday, DEA Administrator Rosenberg acknowledged that constituents in cannabis possess great promise as potential therapies, but he dismissed the notion of the plant itself as medicinal. He said, quote, "That is a joke," end quote. The DEA chief's statements are woefully out of touch with both public opinion and scientific consensus. 23 states and Washington, D.C. permit cannabis therapy by statute, and well over half of physicians with opinions on the matter say that it should be legal as an option for patients. According to the findings of a recent review of FDA-approved clinical trials assessing the safety and therapeutic efficacy of herbal cannabis in various patient populations, he said, quote, "The Schedule I classification of cannabis is not tenable. It's not accurate that cannabis has no medicinal value and that information on the safety is lacking," end quote. In fact, the Federal Department of Health and Human Services, or HHS, has several patents on cannabis for pain, cancer treatment, and seizure disorders. So on one hand, the federal government says it has no medicinal value. On the other hand, they have patents for its medicinal use. A petition on change.org calling on the Obama administration to fire DEA Administrator Rosenberg has gathered over 70,000 signatures, over 50,000 of those in the past day. The Senate on Tuesday passed the budget for 2016, the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Appropriations Bill, which includes language to allow VA or Veterans Administration doctors to recommend medical marijuana to their patients in states where medical marijuana is legal. Language was included as an amendment to the Senate Appropriations Committee in May. Veterans in medical marijuana states should be treated the same as any other residents and should be able to discuss marijuana with their doctor. It makes no sense that a veteran can't use medical marijuana if it helps them and it's legal in their state. The Veterans Equal Access Amendment was sponsored by Republican Senator Steve Daines of Montana and Democratic Senator Jeff Merkley right here in Oregon. It passed the committee 18-12 in a bipartisan vote. The funding bill will now be negotiated with the House's version as part of the omnibus spending bill. In the Midwest, South Dakota's Flandreau Santee Sioux tribe announced over the weekend that it was suspending operation on its marijuana resort set to open on New Year's Eve and that it had burned its cannabis crop. The tribe said it's seeking clarification from the Justice Department to ensure the continued success of the marijuana venture. The move comes as at least 3 other Indian tribes that have embarked on marijuana operations after the Justice Department seemingly gave them a green light last year had been raided by the DEA, a Justice Department agency. At this point, Indian tribes have reason to be nervous about what the federal stance really is. But the Flandreau cannabis operation also drew fast and intense opposition from South Dakota's Republican political establishment and law enforcement figures. And that opposition has brought renewed attention to one of the most bizarre state marijuana laws in the country, South Dakota's internal possession law. It's actually illegal to have marijuana in your system regardless of where you consumed it. As South Dakota's Republican State Attorney General Marty Jackley warned twice when the tribe announced its plans in June, quote, "South Dakota law prohibits the internal and the physical possession, distribution, and manufacture of marijuana by all non-Indian persons anywhere in South Dakota, including within Indian country, all persons including tribal members outside of Indian country," end quote. The South Dakota is one of the most racist anti-Native American states in the country. The sheriff and prosecutor of Moody County, where the Flandreau Reservation is located, reiterated Jackley's point, saying, he said, quote, "The bottom line, if you're non-native, it's illegal for you to have marijuana in your system, regardless of whether you're on tribal ground," end quote, Sheriff Troy Wellman said. They're not kidding. Under the state's law passed in 2001 and upheld by South Dakota's Supreme Court in 2004, you can be arrested, tried, and convicted for having marijuana even in your system, even if you ingested it in another state or country or an Indian reservation. Someone who legally smokes marijuana in Colorado and then drives across the prairie to South Dakota can be charged with the crime of having smoked marijuana elsewhere. It's the same for medical marijuana patients in states bordering South Dakota. Someone who holds a Minnesota or Montana medical marijuana card uses his medicine at home and then travels into South Dakota without marijuana in their possession can be charged with the crime of having internal possession of marijuana. The law specifically allows for prosecuting people for internal possession either where they ingested the substance or where it was detected. The cops in South Dakota are not randomly accosting passersby and demanding they submit to drug tests. Probable cause is still needed. What typically happens is someone's arrested and the police then intimidate that person into consenting to a urine drug test during booking. The person is then hit with another criminal charge, internal possession, providing more leverage for prosecutors during plea negotiations. That's still how it works. People being booked into jails are told they need to provide a urine test, and if they refuse, they're threatened with a court order and the prospect of forced drug testing or having a catheter inserted against their will. Of course, consenting to such drug tests makes it impossible for defense attorneys to challenge them in court, but agreeing to be tested means not only is the prospect of a forced drug test avoided, but also the defendant will likely be booked and released instead of being held until they can appear before a judge for a warrant hearing. Dave Johnson said of his 2003 internal possession bust, he said, quote, "The cops took me downtown and said if I didn't piss for them, they'd stick something in me where they take it by force. They're going to take it forcefully. That's what I was told, so I said okay," end quote. South Dakota attorney Ron Valesky said, quote, "I defend a lot of drug cases and I've defended several of these urine sample cases, but I haven't yet seen an instance where we could challenge a court order because everyone has voluntarily consented. As a practical matter, when the police pick someone up, they say, look, we can do it the hard way or the easy way. You can voluntarily consent because we have probable cause, or we can wake up the judge, have him sign an order, and take you down and have you catheterized at the hospital," end quote. They basically threaten you, end quote. While South Dakota residents are the most frequent victims of the state's internal possession law, it could happen to anyone, especially visitors unaware of the law. And they don't even have to get arrested to face a possible prosecution. Imagine you're a medical marijuana patient visiting South Dakota for a shopping trip and your car gets hit by a drunk driver who runs a red light. The hospitals routinely test the blood of accident victims, and congratulations, you've just become a criminal. South Dakota, where you can get busted for something you did legally elsewhere. Probably not a slogan the state's tourism board is going to select anytime soon. That's for your information. That's the end of our hemp news segment tonight, and we're going to go over to Mr. John Cornett, who's got a song to sing.
Yes, sir, Paul. That really upset me. I would advise people in South Dakota to stay home. Don't come here, because if you walk through a crowd and we're smoking it, it's over. Oh, deep water, black and cold like the night. I stand with arms wide open. I've run a twisted mile. I'm a stranger in the hands of the Maker. I could not see from the fog in my eyes. I could not feel from the fear in my life. From across the great divide, in a distance I saw a light. Jean-Baptiste walking to me with the Maker. My body is bent and broken. My long and dangerous sleep. I can work the fields of Abraham and turn my head away. I'm not a stranger in the hands of the Maker. homeless doctors standing there with broken wings. I've seen the flaming sword there over east of Eden, burning in the eyes of the Maker, burning in the eyes of the Maker, burning in the eyes of the Maker. From your sleep.
All right. Thank you, John. Mr. John Cornett. I'd like to welcome Gary Stewart. Good to see you, Gary.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks for coming on. So you have been a medical marijuana patient for some time, working to change the laws in the state of Wisconsin. You want to tell our viewers a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was born with glaucoma back in 1955, and as a small child, I found myself losing my eyesight rapidly. And around on October 3rd, 1972, I smoked a little cannabis before heading off to see my eye doctor. And it was an amazing thing. My pressures were normal that day, and they were usually very elevated. So a little light went off in my head, and I realized that I could preserve my vision by using cannabis, and that was 43 years ago now. So I've tried to get in the IND program. I worked with Robert Randall back in the late 1970s, but I was unable to find a doctor. And then I moved to California for a while. And when I came back in 95, I met Jackie Rickert, a patient from Wisconsin who had also applied for the IND program. And
so the IND program, you want to tell our audience what that is for those who don't know?
Yeah, in 1976, Robert Randall, a glaucoma patient like myself, sued the federal government after he was arrested for his medicine in Washington, D.C. And because of that, he won the right to receive 300 pre-rolled 9/10 of a gram marijuana cigarettes from the federal government each month. And so that program was established, and his archives are actually now on the campus of the University of Wisconsin-Madison at the Wisconsin Historical Society. I went and took a look at him earlier, a couple months ago, and I found a copy of an affidavit I had filed anonymously on behalf of Bob Randall when the feds took away his medicine in 1978. And he assembled such a heavy amount of evidence that they just gave him his medicine without it ever going to trial. So
they established this federal program for compassionate use, the IND program. What'd that stand for?
Investigational New Drug.
Okay, and they do that for various new drugs.
Right.
And so it was a program from about 78, and then the first President Bush, the elder, he discontinued that. What was that, like 19?
Yeah, we suspended it in 1991 or 2, and Jackie Rickert, a good friend of mine from Wisconsin who suffers from Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and a number of other ailments, had a really good doctor up in rural Wisconsin where she lived, and she was able to get him to approve her for not only research but compassionate use, and that happened in December of 1990. And her and her daughter were in constant contact with the government, and they kept saying they were going to send the medicine, and one time they actually admitted that they were ready to send it and had been told not to. So
the first President Bush discontinued it because so many people were qualifying.
Right.
And so I think when they cut it off, they were giving medicine to how many?
I think there was about 13.
Yeah, 13 or 17, and now there's just 3 or 4 of them left, right?
Yeah, there's
that still
4,
get
and
it.
I think
there's
only
Masika.
I think only Albie and Herb are
Herb.
getting their medicine. I think
Maybe
George
McBain.
and what's
Can't remember the other guy's name.
It's a lady. I can't think of her name.
I think they can't find a doctor in Iowa.
Yeah.
And so Jackie met Clinton on the campaign trail in '92 as well in Mondovi, and he promised her that if he was elected, she would get her medicine. So it's too bad he wasn't elected because Jackie would have got her medicine.
Yeah, if only Bill Clinton had been elected, right?
Yeah.
He would have definitely kept his promise. Right?
Absolutely.
So for some reason he didn't. We know he was elected to 2 terms, and gee, how long has it been? 16 years now, and his wife's still running.
So I met Jackie in '97 at the conclusion of the Journey for Justice. She had led about 15 people wheelchair march that took a week from Mondovi to Madison. That's about 180 miles, but the way they went took 210 miles. And they came to the state capitol, and I met her that day, and we became friends and began working together on this issue. And we started IMLE, Is My Medicine Legal Yet, around 2000. And we just continued to ramp up the pressure and get more people on board. And we found some legislators willing to pick it up. And everything kind of peaked around 2009, 2010. We got a full hearing, joint hearing at the Capitol. And
That's right about when the Republicans took control of all the legislature and governor's seat there in Wisconsin.
yeah, November
right?
2010. We also had a vote in Dane County in River Falls for medical marijuana, advisory referendums, and both of them passed. But in that same election, Scott Walker was elected governor, and the Republicans took control of both houses of the Wisconsin legislature.
And
So-
they haven't been friendly toward this issue at all.
No, they passed a CBD bill that was flawed, and they're working on that still. But there's no means of supply in the state. So
So about 2010, you found out that Oregon would allow out-of-state residents to get medical permits.
me and Jackie came out here for the Normal Conference in September of 2010, and we made appointments at the THC clinic and went in there, and I think it was September 10th was the date, and back then,
Almost 5 years ago now.
you could go to the window and register. They still had that.
Yeah, at the state office.
And so that was my first card, and I'm now on my 5th. And gradually, as the news spread, more and more people from Wisconsin began to get on board. And as of the latest statistics, September 1st, there's 50 patients from Wisconsin. It's the 5th largest state of out-of-state patients.
That have Oregon state cards.
Right.
So there was an instance where some patients presented their card to police when confronted, right?
Yeah, last September 2014, I went to a political festival up in Baraboo, a little north of Madison, and while we were there, the people I went with had left their dog in the car, and she was barking.
Well, there's an image from the newspaper. They were able to
Yeah,
open those.
and so the police looked in the car and they saw some medicine laying out. And when we went back to it, they contacted us, and things weren't looking good. And I went back and got my friend's wife. It was this couple, and I came back and I was kind of helping them from the sidelines, and I brought up a case from 2004, also in Sauk County in Baraboo, where Todd Mickeria had issued a recommendation to a woman in California, and she moved back to Wisconsin, and she was arrested, and that case was dismissed.
Mm-hmm.
And once I mentioned that to them, their whole attitude changed, and we could tell that, they started petting the dog, and it was just, and they said, well, we
So
think,
there's the medical marijuana law that's on the statutes.
yeah,
this is from the 70s, right? This was passed.
yeah, these
back
are
in the
found in a
70s.
lot of different states'
Yeah.
version of the Controlled Substances Act.
Yes. And so it does have a medical exclusion.
And this has been upheld in a number of cases. The the Baraboo, Wisconsin city attorney accepted it and declined to prosecute my friends. And I even know of a case in Wisconsin where someone has used it to help them with a custody issue in family law court, where they were, you know,
they were threatened with losing custody of their children.
Yeah, and they were able to show that this is a legitimate thing, and that was accepted too. So it's been really valuable, you know, and it's tragic that with all the work we've done in Wisconsin that we haven't been able to pass a medical bill, but being able to come to Oregon and get the card has really been a godsend for a lot of patients, and myself and Jackie.
What do you think about the Oregon legislature now passing the bill to curtail out-of-state residents from their ability to get this card?
Yeah, we're really disappointed in that, and definitely hope it doesn't stand, because this is something that people in Wisconsin really rely on. And I know, you know, it's our fault to state that we haven't passed the law yet, but we really have no choice in it. We have no, it's a one-party state now, and there's really nothing people can do to change things. So we have to rely on this, and I hope the state of Oregon will reverse this. So
we have a video that you put together with Jackie back in 2010, I believe. I think we can get that to run now. Let's run that video. We'll be back in just a second.
Good, but I'm not that good.
All right, so here we are on the way to the THC Foundation to get Jackie legal. What do you have to say, Jackie?
Huh?
What do you have to say on this auspicious case?
I say somebody better come through or I'm going to be really upset. I would love you, doctor. Go on my state, like the federal government. Everybody just let me down. They have contracts that go nowhere.
Well, today things are going to be different.
I hope so. I pray to God. I pray to God. Anybody out there? We're finally here.
Oh, the
Oh,
video
it's a
must have
short
jammed.
video, yeah.
No, I
okay.
think it jammed. Are they able to? That running again, or oh?
I got my card. I got my card. Really nice doctor. He sounded kind of like Ozzy almost. He was a pretty good bloke, he was.
So how do you feel, Jackie? You're legal, almost.
I feel
One
like
more step.
that man was twice the man. The government people that work at the FDA, and blah, 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 blah. DEA. There was a compassionate doctor. The Dr. Wright, who knew what was the right thing to do. As he said, he's never smoked marijuana in his life, but he believes people who are in pain and all the different problems should have it. It's a plant given to us by God.
Well, we've got a few little problems there, technical glitches, but you were able to take that in to the state, and she got her card.
Yeah.
And we've got her renewed. She still got a card.
Yeah, not only that, kind of an exciting thing this September 10th, she had a bad medical incident in the March of 2013 and or 2014, and she was given 6 months to live, and she's now lived more than a year since that date, you know, thanks to cannabis. And you know, it just keeps her going, and you know, it's just too bad the government never supplied her and she has to rely on.
Yeah,
others.
she got approved. She spent all that time to get on the same list that Elvie Masika and Herb Rosenfeld are on, but they never did follow through because of George Bush the First.
Yeah.
If you're out there watching, you have a question for Gary Stork or for Casper or I about cannabis or medical marijuana or an industrial hemp, you can call us at that number there on your screen. It's 503-288-4442. That's 503-288-4442.
Really nice to see that video. I spent a lot of time on the phone with Jackie and Tammy in the early 90s. And they reached out to us then, and they were hoping that I would be able to help get their story out through Time for Hemp at that time. And when you see stories like that and reports of that nature, it does remind, I don't know about you, Paul, but at least me, as to why it is that you and I do this type of broadcasting, so that we can get those voices loud and to keep those voices heard. Because as long as they're on MP3 audio or video and they are archived on your website or mine, their message can continue to be told. So it is a daunting responsibility. Sometimes you don't recognize until you see in front of your face the importance of medical cannabis.
We have a caller who's standing by. If you have a question or a comment for us, you can call us at 503-288-4442. Hello, caller. Are you there?
Hi, how you doing?
Very well. How are you?
Not too bad. I just got a pretty simple question since you guys are so smart. Hi, Kermit.
Keep trying.
Anyways, I live in Clark County, and you know, we can buy marijuana and everything, but I'm not clear on how come we can't grow it.
You know, the people who drafted that law, which was primarily attorneys with the American Civil Liberties Union in Seattle, did not put a provision in Washington's law to allow people to grow their own. And I think that was a gross oversight. And now the legislature of Washington is cracking down on marijuana with their Senate Bill 5052 that Governor Inslee signed into law, which makes it where even medical patients aren't going to be able to grow as many plants. You had been able to grow 15 plants under Washington's law. They're cutting that back to 4. And so they're dramatically reducing the ability to compete with those recreational stores. And they're saying that patients have to go to those stores and pay the high tax. Have you been in those recreational stores in Washington?
Yeah, I paid like $20 for a product, and there was $18 in tax.
And that was for what, like 2 grams?
Yeah.
So you got 2 grams for $40. That is just crazy.
Yeah.
You know, this stuff they can produce for 10 or 15 cents. You know, you can grow this stuff on trees.
Well, yeah, I can go up the street and get an ounce for like $60, but you know, they'll arrest me.
Yeah, right, on the black market from your friends. So it's just
it's
crazy that the state is charging such an outrageous tax.
Well, I think it's they're for lack of a better term, raping us.
Yeah, I think that's a real good term for it.
You know, and I don't know what to do to get.
We just have to change that law and tell the legislators. You're in Clark County, so you've got to tell the legislators in Olympia how this hurts you, and you should be able to grow your own plant. And the price shouldn't be so high. This stuff grows on trees. And eventually we'll change these crazy laws. It's a lot better than being arrested. But, you know, in Washington, it's legal for any person to have up to an ounce. But if they have 29 grams, that's a misdemeanor, and they have to spend at least 1 day in jail. And if they have 40 grams or more, that's a felony. And so you can go to prison for a year or 2 years under that. So it's not real legalization in Washington. And if we can't get the legislature in Olympia to change that, then we're going to have to go back to the initiative process and get the people to change it, because the people are on our side.
Well, I totally agree, and I think we need a couple lobbyists like you guys over here.
You know, I was Washington State Normal Coordinator back when I was a young man from 1982 to 1984, and I did lobby in Olympia. I'm an Evergreen State College student there, and I moved to Oregon in 1984 to help the marijuana initiative here, and we got it on the ballot in '85 and lost overwhelmingly with just 26% of the vote back during President Reagan's administration. But we kept up at it, and now we have a law that's better, than what you have in Washington, but ours can be improved too.
Well, I'm happy to see the progress.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll keep making changes. You know, they're continually changing the laws around alcohol, and I think we'll see the same thing around marijuana as the laws continue to change, and eventually it should be cheap and plentiful.
Right. Well, as long as the government's being greedy, that's what we're dealing with is all.
Yeah, I agree. It's the government and the police and the corrupt officials.
Right. Well, hey, you guys have a great night, and you got a killer show.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for watching.
All right. Later.
So long. We have another caller there standing by. Welcome to the show, caller.
Yeah, Paul. I've been doing cannabis for 45 years.
Uh-huh.
And the issue that I have is that people for many, and I'm a true Oregonian, and people for years have always down-talked this like it was a bad thing, and then all of a sudden there's dollar signs involved in this product, whether it's social or medical, and now everybody wants to jump to this and try making billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Get rich off of it. And they forget about the whole purpose of what this plant is all about.
Yeah, I agree. You know, this stuff grows on trees. I harvest plants that are 10 to 15 feet tall that produce anywhere from 2 to 12 pounds. And it should be cheap. And unfortunately, there's artificial environment. And eventually we've got to change the regulations to make it where, we don't have this outrageous tax. When we remove the limits on hemp and can grow hemp without regard to its THC content, but according to the most productive seed and fiber varieties, will change the whole world economy with hemp fuel, hemp paper, and that will have an incredible impact on the world economy.
And let's keep in mind that the majority of the population, though they've known subconsciously the truth about industrial hemp, it has been shoved in the back of their minds for so long that it's never been a thought until now. And if you recall when you first became a hemp activist and learned that hemp can make over 50,000 different products and it could stimulate $1 trillion industry and could generate jobs in your backyard, you got ecstatic, very enthusiastic, and finally got on the bandwagon, like all of us, to make this an industry and to make it happen. Well, keep in mind now that there is millions of people who are just suddenly discovering hemp, though it's been there for the longest time.
Some
but up
people
until now,
call it a green rush.
Right, it's a green rush. But up until now, it's been that hidden, as Jack used to say, they used to hide the knowledge. You couldn't find it in the dictionaries. They took it out of the schoolrooms, took it out of the classrooms. So it wasn't being taught in the field of medicine as an alternative to pain. It wasn't being taught in economics as a way of creating jobs and product. And it wasn't being taught in a variety of other agricultural outlets as well as a way of creating a cash crop. Now, all of a sudden, everybody's got a new cash crop that can create new products with new fibers. And there's new ways of using it through the 3D printing. So everybody sees dollar signs in it. And the truth is, the government's not letting go of the reins until now that they found a way of still controlling hemp industry through taxes. And
through these regulations,
right?
Saying we can't grow industrial hemp with more than 0.3%.
Exactly.
So by limiting the THC, what they've done is they've limited the ability to harvest flowers.
Exactly.
And by limiting the flowers, you limit the seeds, and that's the key. Marijuana prohibition has never really been about drugs. It's always been about money, power, and the continued centralization of economic and political control. And it's always been about fuel. And this oil, here we have a hemp fuel burning with a hemp wick, with hemp twine, 100% hemp in that cup, and a little, what we call our flame of freedom.
And the green rush is just the realization of 1 million people all of a sudden discovering hemp all over again and wanting to turn it into a $1 trillion industry, like we know it should be.
I use hemp string for tying my sage wands. I'm also Native American. But see, back in the early 20s, the cannabis was legal, and I don't understand why they took it off the market when it was legal in the 20s.
It's all about the fuel. It's all about the fuel. They made up this. They couldn't have made hemp illegal. They couldn't have if they tried. So they said it was a deadly new drug called marijuana, and nobody knew that that was cannabis and hemp. And that's how they made it illegal, through that lie and that misdirection. You know,
But
people
yet
were
our
really racist.
president-
As a Native American, I'm
President
sure you've
Washington
experienced
was-
that. In Washington State especially, it's almost as bad as South Dakota. But they used that racism inherent in the name marijuana, and that's how they made it illegal.
That's not right.
No, it's not right at all. It's wrong, and our whole planet is suffering from deforestation, because we can't use hemp for paper and fabric, and building materials, from global warming because we can't use hemp as a fuel, and from world hunger. If we were using hemp as a fuel, we'd have lots of protein to wipe out world hunger.
And those members in our movement have managed to stimulate this industry. Over the last 20 years, we have become a large importer of hemp products, from paper to fabrics to balms and cosmetics. And our industries, our local industries, are greedy. The big business want that money, and so they're now finding a ways to get that finger in that pie and to make America a hemp production economy as well.
Well, thank you, because that lady there in Seattle building this house out of hemp, she was having financial problems because she couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah,
and it was
that's the problem.
costing too much money.
Exactly.
It grows on trees. It shouldn't be expensive.
It's natural. It was God given to us for a reason.
Yeah, it's the oldest crop. It's been cultivated at least 12,000 years, and the most productive crop. Produces more fuel, more fiber, more food, and more medicine than any other plant. And so they have prohibited the oldest and most productive crop. I always like to remind our viewers, how can they make the oldest crop, the foundation of agriculture, and the most productive crop illegal, based on lies?
I've been doing it for 45 years, and I've been lucky that I hadn't never caught. So.
Well, we hope you don't get caught, and hopefully we'll be able to change the law. You'll be able to grow it up there in Washington sometime soon.
Well, I'm here in Oregon, and I believe that
It's that last guy.
I'm all for this 100%, and I'm glad you guys are there helping us.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for calling.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. I think we have another caller. Let's go ahead and take that call. Hello.
Thank you.
Hey, how are you?
Oh, good morning. Oh, hello.
Hello.
Oh, hi. Hey, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Yeah, I was going through Craigslist the other day, and under the computer section, someone wanted to trade some high-quality marijuana for a Mac laptop. Is that legal?
Not really. Not really. I mean, you know, what the police don't know about, you can't be arrested for, or whoever it is. If you can find someone who wants to trade, then...
Could it be legal if the person who wanted the Mac had a medical marijuana license, the one who had the
then it would be legal for patients to trade it.
Yeah, if they were both
but
patients.
Just to trade it to another person, it's illegal for a person who doesn't have a medical card to have more than 8 ounces.
Oh, I see. Okay, hey, thank you very much.
Thank you. So, you know, we've got our hemp fuel here that's burning. We got our hemp fiber, and we have this video. I've been working with a associate professor who's been on our show and on Casper's network with the radio show, Andrea Herman. She teaches a class about industrial hemp at Oregon State University. She's introduced me to some graduate students, and we want to quantify hemp seed production from high THC cannabis. There is no study of high THC cannabis seed production. And so far, we haven't been able to do that. The head of the university says it's against federal law, even though our own Representative Blumenauer had an amendment to the Farm Bill that makes it legal. So the professors at OSU are curtailed from being able to do research on hemp because of the administration of the college. There's been a little bit of media about that. We have a little video clip about that situation. So here it is.
University is striving to lead the nation in industrial hemp research. The goal of the research focuses on learning about plant growth. News Source 16's Megan Shin spoke with faculty at OSU. She joins us in studio tonight. Megan, what's behind this study? Stephanie, some staff at Oregon State believe their research can help the hemp industry market and even more Oregonians as a whole. Hemp is usually associated with marijuana, but researchers say the hemp plant itself can be used for many things. Researchers say hemp plants can be used for clothing, fuels, and many other materials.
So we're looking at a simple question of, can we grow to maturity industrial hemp in Oregon, specifically Western Oregon? The university, and that is our stakeholders, are asking for the basic information on growing industrial hemp.
Oregon State Vice President of Relations Steve Clark says that's why they are working to join a handful of state universities interested in this research.
Oregon State is a leader. I mean, we are rated nationally and internationally among some of the top natural resources universities internationally.
Faculty at the College of Agricultural Sciences submitted the applications needed to the Federal Drug Enforcement Administration. Completing both state and federal paperwork is just one step. They currently have to import hemp seeds from overseas. For the results to be meaningful and useful, they need time and money.
We're feeling very good about that, but we also have to raise close to $2.5 million to fund 3 to 5 years worth of research.
Noller says they estimate testing around a dozen different types of hemp. They say the research can lead to production of more hemp-based materials.
We should be in at least experimenting with our research to see just how well we could position Oregon in the international market.
Steve Clark says they hope to begin hemp growing trials in time for the 2016 growing season. Also, the program could potentially give students research opportunities. Clark says there is no concern of potential hemp misuse because research will be supervised. Live from the studio, I'm Megan Shin, News Source 16.
So that's a change of pace in that story because they've been stopping this research so far. You know, they've been saying they can't allow it to happen. And so fortunately now they're trying to sweep that under the rug, saying they're trying to get federal permission, and maybe we'll be able to move forward. Because I don't want to research low THC hemp. That has been researched. We want to research high THC hemp to prove that it makes 20 times more seed than the low THC hemp does and twice as much fiber. So we hope to be able to do that research soon. So if you have a question or comment for us, you can call us at that number there on your screen. 503-288-4442. So Gary, what's next in your work in Wisconsin?
I'm not sure. We're just gonna keep an eye on. We have a bipartisan hemp bill happening. One Republican on it, but that's stuck in committee, and the committee chairman has refused to hold a hearing. He's gotten 2 letters from the sponsor, and he hasn't even responded. And I think later this month there's going to be a Senate hearing on the CBD bill, and that's also bipartisan. It passed by a large margin last session, but it was written so poorly that nobody could legally access it. So they have a bill to fix that, which would take away the requirement to have a prescription to possess CBD in Wisconsin. And I expect that to pass, but they really would not allow the medical cannabis people into the process. They, you know, it's been really secretive, and they've made it clear they don't want to work with us. And so it's, you know, it's not really going to help people like Jackie and myself who've been working on this issue for a long time. And
yeah, since the 70s. It's a long time. We have a caller standing by, a couple of them. Welcome to the show, caller.
Yes, good evening, Paul.
Howdy.
And Jasper.
Hey.
This is Ken McCoy over in Vancouver, the
Hi,
older Vancouver, not that startup sawmill in Canada. And just wanted to say, first of all, as a board member and fellow filmmaker and television producer over here in Vancouver with FVTV, Fort Vancouver Television.
Yeah.
And I've been part of the vehicle that has allowed our viewers in Southwest Washington to see Cannabis Common Sense
Thank you.
You'll recall your original messenger to us back at the turn of the century was Dawn Pickle.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's still there.
We've been proud to, of course, inform the Southwest Washington viewers of the breaking developments on this industry of yours. And I'll say that I did, in fact, qualify as one of the 32 that were in the lottery for the 6 Vancouver licenses.
All right.
It was my desire to flip it if we got drawn for one of the 6 licenses so we could fund FVTV, who, like most nonprofits, is always looking for a pillar.
Sure.
Financial pillar. And regrettably, Paul and Casper, I got drawn 31st.
Oh, no.
And as they say on Seinfeld, no soup for 31.
Right.
I will say this, the Vancouver Planning Commission the other day did put forward a recommendation that they passed to the City Council of Vancouver to increase the number of retail licensees from 6 to 9.
Okay, so there's openings for 3 more.
And just wanted to say that I also had my first opportunity to purchase a Washington State pot product last week. I made a visit to Greenheads Only, which wasn't my first pot store visit. As you might imagine, having been in the lottery, I had to go see how it turned out.
Sure.
But I would like to say this. I bought a gram of OG, and I bought a gram of Northern Lights. And I was pleased to see that in my receipt that it broke down all the taxes.
Oh.
My total purchase price for these 2 different grams was $21.60.
I see.
So I kind of wanted to, compare that against your $40 2-gram
Yeah,
collar.
that other fellow. I was up in Seattle and went into one store. That's the only one I've been in Washington. And they were selling half grams for $10, some of them.
Well, in this breakdown, it was $24 or $12 a gram. I got a $2.40 discount because I was military.
Oh, all right.
The tax was $5.50, which was included in that $24 original price. And the other tax, which would be sales tax, was $1.24.
I see.
So my total price for the 2 grams was $21. So, it's not quite so bad.
It's not as bad as that other guy who was talking here.
Well, yeah, and it's like, the $7 grams and the $10 grams that are over in your neck of the woods, too. It depends on where you look sometimes as to what's going on. But anyway,
you know what? Our clock is ticking down.
Yeah,
we've got less than 3 minutes, so I've got to...
your continued support and vice versa.
All right, well, thanks for your call, sir, and good luck on getting one of those 3 new licenses they're opening up.
I think they're going to take number 7, 8, and 9, and it went up.
Oh, really? Well, maybe someday they'll get up to 31. Thank you. Casper, you want to give a plug for your thing?
TimeForHemp.com. Check it out. Like a good joint, we are best when shared with friends. Lots of great content, lots of great archives. Download for free. TimeForHemp.com.
Andrea Herman, who teaches that class at OSU, has her show, which
She
is...
does. iHemp Radio. You can
Radio.
check that out. We've also got Skunk Magazine doing a weekly program. Mark Emery is on board. Judge James Gray does a show each month. And we've got, of course, Paul Stanford and I doing programming throughout the month on the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. iHeartRadio, Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google+, and, of course, we are now new on the Roku TV network.
So, Gary, you want to give people a way to reach your website?
Yeah, you can follow what I'm doing in Wisconsin by visiting my blog, cannabadger.com. I write about the intersection of cannabis in Wisconsin. And Is My Medicine Legal Yet? Is IMMLY.org.
IMMLY.org. Thank you for coming on, Gary.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Casper. If you are interested in finding a medical marijuana permit, just look for us at that phone number, 800-723-0188, or contact us on the web at hemp.org. We're going to have tape shows for the next 3 weeks, but we'll be back here live on December 12th. I'm going to be down speaking at 3 events in South America: Expo Haze in Argentina, Expo Weed in Chile, and Expo Cannabis in Uruguay. But I'll be back here for the show on December 12th. Tune in next week. Here's Mr. John Cornett and help us restore hemp. Good night.